I think self-care is also about knowing when you're struggling. And that's one of the hardest things to know, because when you're in your life every day and when you're used to that struggle, you don't necessarily realize that it's happening. So self-care to me is that it's like knowing when you're struggling, when to change it and how to change it. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's easy, and it's not something you can always do independently. You discuss about your life all the time when you can with your friends, because sometimes a different perspective, like, it makes you realize like why you're struggling. And I think that's really important. We have to basically make sure we're doing the most to show that we're supportive people, or that we're advocating areas which people can go to get help quickly. So it shouldn't be a struggle to find access for help. Like, if I'm posting about it, somebody else can post about it. We can all post a quick route to help. And I think that there is the biggest thing that we need to do. It's like general education. And even though I think social media does have its positives in terms of the fact that it helps us communicate more with people, the negative impact it has is huge. Because on social media, I'm sure even I do it subconsciously, as much as I try to like express when I'm struggling, on social media, you're trying to do the most to show how great life is. It's how it's designed. Like, even when Instagram came out, like their signature like slogans were like, show your best times, share your happy memories. That's what we're doing on social media. We're spending so much time to show we're having a great time, but then we're not sharing the bad times. And for someone who's in a bad place, they're looking at this and they're all the time, we're just comparing. We're thinking, oh, like, they're my age. Why am I not doing that? Why have I not got to this stage yet? And I think even though this pandemic has been crazy, that's something to kind of take from the pandemic. Like, life at the moment, or to be fair, forever now, is always something could come along that's going to change life completely.
I just wanted to also kind of pick your brains really about your views on kind of the new way of therapy, moving away from kind of traditional therapy in this digital age, and what your thoughts are around messaging therapy and message therapy. That's something that obviously we are offering at Support Room. So really what your views are around that.
In general, I think it's amazing to have that kind of access. And my main perspective on that is, like, when I'm working, so I work pretty much 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. When I'm at work, like, that's that. Like, I come home, I'm very tired. Like, it'd be very difficult for me to organize an in-person therapy session, especially like multiple times during the week. At most, I could probably fit in one session, and it would have to be either on a very late evening or a weekend. And I'm sure, to be fair, that's the same for everyone. Like, where pretty much the whole world is on this standard working cycle. So having access which is instant is important, especially because therapy in general, like the whole process behind it when it comes to cognitive therapy, it's like we're trying to learn new techniques. And if you just hold it once and then you have to just practice it yourself, that's quite difficult. So having consistent support, I think, is important. What I was saying that I like about Support Room is that you'll give access to genuinely trained and qualified therapists. A lot of services in the UK particularly, even though they're amazing, it's volunteers who've had lesser training. And with that, you don't necessarily know that the patients who are accessing that services are getting true therapy. They might be getting immediate help, but will that help them in the long run?
Yes. I mean, that is, I mean, how has that, you know, been a barrier to your kind of, or impacted your mental health being from that LGBTQ community?
I think personally that for anyone, not just me, being a part of the LGBTQ plus community, it puts you at a higher risk of mental health issues. And what I've kind of researched in general is, and that's just because being a part of this different community, like, your life is continuously discussed in the media and in law. So continuously, unlike the cishet population, you're having to fight for your own rights. And in the UK particularly, anything LGBTQ is considered a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. That doesn't necessarily mean because your characteristics are protected that you can live freely. What that means is you can get defense if you are oppressed. And that's why I think people from that community in general are likely to suffer more, because they're continuously having to kind of, in a way, repress themselves because they're scared of being truly open just in case they are oppressed. And I think at the same time, lack of representation in the world is huge, and that's in everything. Lack of representation in teachers, in media, in politics. If your whole life you can't see or relate in something, then of course you're going to feel unvalidated, and you're going to think, well, can I actually be what I want to be? Can I reach any of my aspirations? So then you start internalizing hatred for yourself. And that's something that I think is really big in the community.
And then going, if you don't mind me asking a bit more personally, then, like from a cultural aspect, there's, you know, the whole kind of process of feeling accepted for you yourself. I mean, that must have been, you know, I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, that must have been, I can imagine, quite a difficult process to go through. I mean, coming out anyway would be, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. So like luckily, like I have like a really accepting mom, a really accepting sister, but with extended family, it hasn't been an easy process, and I don't think it ever will be. Sometimes though, I think like I'm very open to education. So for me, it's like, okay, I get it. People have different views. But just because I have a bit of a stronger mindset when it comes to that, not necessarily everybody does. Coming out in general, I feel like I still think it's a bit unfortunate that people have to do that, because it's kind of like where when you're coming out, it's kind of like it kind of gives it like, oh, this is my choice to be this person. Whereas we know that being part of the LGBT community is just who you are. It's what it is. It's not a choice. And what I'm liking and what I've been seeing is a bit more, it's still a bit more Western, but people they'll just bring home their partner, or they'll just be who they are, and what they're trying to do is they just see how their parents react, and a lot of the time the parents react well, which is amazing. That's what I want to see more of. I think having to come out, like, that's outdated. Especially like in the Western world, we don't need that no more. It's just like, be who you are, and hopefully things will work out well. If they don't, luckily, especially in the UK, there are safe places for you.
And, you know, going back to what you were saying about having people who support you, who are there for you, who can kind of, you know, be with you through those times, those struggling moments, it's just so important. But again, going back to what I was saying to you, that not everyone has, you know, you said your mum and your sister are really supportive, and that's amazing. Some people don't,
No.
you know, and what, and that's heartbreaking, you know. And what advice would you have for anyone who doesn't have that support network, you know, to go and talk to? What could they do like, when they're feeling alone and
Yeah.
nobody understands?
So even it's unfortunate, but in my opinion, I'd say continue to be who you are, but you've got to be safe. And that's a really sad thing to say. You do have to be safe though, because if you're being as expressive as you want to be in an environment which is very oppressive, and you're going to end up hurt, like, I'd recommend trying to avoid getting hurt in the short term, but work in the background on somewhere where you'll end up in a safe space where you can be yourself and flourish to the most. So that involves a lot, and it has done for years now, that being a part of the LGBT community online rather than in person, which is, I hate saying that, it's one of the saddest things ever, but unfortunately for some communities, especially cultural, that is kind of the way at the moment to break out of it.
Yeah.
My support room is really great. They are going to be open from January and give you access to a therapist all online, which is really good to hear. And lastly, talk to people if you can, if you're struggling. And you don't have to talk to a friend, you can talk to me. And I'm sure if you access my support room, you can talk to them. and hit up pretty much anyone on my followers list. Most of us are dental care professionals who think holistically. We think about things more than just teeth, and we would go above and beyond to make sure you're feeling safe and comfortable. And I think that is always key.